Hello and welcome to Cracking the Rich Code, the podcast. I'm John Jericho and I'm your host. And once again, I am delighted to have a chat with another author in the Cracking the Rich Code series. I tell you, there is so many powerhouses in this group, so many fabulous co-authors, so many brilliant people, and each one has their own individual spark. And you're going to just love Katie Augustine. She is a bundle of positive energy and spirituality, and let me just bring her on and show you how she helps the not people in the nonprofit sector in particular to grow and flourish. So, Katie, there she. Whoop, there. All right, we're here now. That was weird.
A lot of energy moving, maybe.
There was so much going on. Katie, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, John, and for hosting this on behalf of Cracking the Rich Code. It's so important and just wonderful. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. You know, when Jim Brett asked if I would kind of take over the hosting of this, I was like, what, you mean I have to force myself to talk to some of the co-authors in this series? You know, it's all these brilliant, wonderful people. Yeah, I think you can twist my arm to do that. Sure.
Yeah. I think to your point, when you mentioned the spark that everyone has, we have such an awesome community of coaches and influencers in that community. And to your point, every time I talk to anyone or in Jim's mastermind, it's just, I'm just blown away really by the amount of people there, their brilliance, their support, the way they're giving, the co-creative energy versus competition. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody's working really to help each other, which is so fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that's inspired me about you, Katie, as I first started to learn more about you and what you do, is you really focus on the nonprofit sector. And that is a special place. It really is. I mean, so many people are out there trying to make money, and you sit there and you go, okay, what is somebody who's working in nonprofit or focusing on nonprofit doing in cracking the rich code?
Yes.
Because people in nonprofit aren't looking to get rich, but there's a richness of life, and people in the nonprofit sector are doing things for the communities and reaching out and being helpful, and they do it out of the goodness of their hearts, not out of potential for their wallets.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Let's just chat about that.
Yeah. Well,
first of all, let's.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think to your point, there's so many great people doing such good work. And it's an interesting time, right? Because a lot of these nonprofits feel like the funds are tightening up or a variety of things, right? As inflation hits, then do people give less but one of the ways I'm wanting to support is really and the leaders that I work with is reminding them that everything's also mindset, everything's a consciousness. And so it's supporting nonprofit leaders to really look at a whole nother level of it. And so speaking of cracking the rich code, like we know some of these, what you might call personal development or consciousness tools that we help people, focus on vision versus the problem. And so I just want to bring that to these nonprofit leaders that are just in the midst of just a little bit of chaos right now, up until now, right? And so I just feel like it's such a great sector, and some of my work is just getting started with them. But I've already been working with a few people that they're just loving it. They're loving bringing the mindset into the analytics and merging that so that they can be really powerful, as a leader in their institution. So yeah.
Katie, what kind of drew you to working to help the improvement in that sector?
I think it was just this idea that as our planet's changing, and I was telling you earlier, John, when we were talking offline, that I believe we're in this like kind of planetary evolution, and I've studied with Indigenous elders, and I know at the level of fact, people can be looking at this time as very like what's happening, right? The world's ending, or it's very chaotic. But truly, it's been prophesized for thousands and thousands of years, this time on the planet. So, and many of us look at it as like a very blessed time to be alive, like a time where we can really make a difference. If we're here, there's a purpose, right? And we can make a difference. And so with nonprofits, these are already people that are making the difference, right? And I just kind of want to remind them, like you're already doing the work, and consciousness building starts, it's grassroots movements, right? It's going to start within the community, within the regions, and then with the mindset that we hold. And so it was just drawn to it. It was almost a natural fit. The environmental work I do and the coaching work I do, it's just a natural fit to say, how do we support the people that are already out there making the difference? So that's how I got into it. That's cool. Yeah. And John,
That's lovely. So what?
oh, go ahead. I was going to ask about, say, your background kind of leads to a little bit of a nonprofit view as well, doesn't it? I mean, from some of what you were telling me.
Yeah, I was in public service for 90% of my career. I came to it a little bit late. I mean, I did a bunch of other things, in the commercial sector before I joined the Navy in my mid-20s, and then wound up just staying in that sector because I realized I wasn't out there trying to make somebody else, some CEO richer, in some company. I really wanted to work with people who were out there trying to make a difference for others. And so I stayed for 42 years in that community in public service.
I love
So, yeah, I mean, but we do that, right? We find the place where our heart is, and we see how we can make a difference, or we find others that are making a difference, and we're inspired by them and work to help them to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll add here that also to bring in income, right? So nonprofits right now, one of the thing is the funding and the membership and the impact that they're making. And so that's one of the goals I have is not, it's not about like making some other, CEO rich, to your point, but it is about like, how do we then align with the energy of money that's going to serve so that we can make a greater impact and have more members and really get these movements across. So I love that. I just wanted to mention that since you're
that is something
CEOs. Yeah.
That is something about the nonprofit sector that we see a lot. There are so many people that are passionate about their cause. They're passionate about their mission. They want to, make a difference, but they don't necessarily have the skills or the proper mindset for the business side and the business aspects of it to be able to keep it running. Yeah. And so this is where somebody like you can make such a huge difference for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that just goes back to one of the reasons, like the business analytics that I have from, I was a banking attorney for 22 years, but I worked a lot in risk and compliance and, a little bit more of the like assessment type work. But a lot of analytics that I can bring and support people with in also like strategy analytics in growing things, but also doing it from a certain consciousness. So it's all about, as you and I know, it's all about consciousness first. And then, okay, now we can put it into place in these structures. So it's
right,
really
right. What are the things we need to do to make this work and to make this successful so that we can continue the good work?
Exactly. Love it.
Yeah. You mentioned some environmental work too, and I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. So I've kind of coined a phrase of, calling myself kind of like a environmental activist, but like really like just self-proclaimed. I don't want to say like I've been out there, because at the level of fact, between work and family and all these things, I never really went to law school to become an environmental lawyer, and that never occurred. So however, what was really cool is I stayed involved through many of the nonprofit organizations, just over the years by donating, and then you just get their information and staying really involved. And then with some of the more local communities. And what I love about, but also where I see I could bring some support with environmental is it can look very dire sometimes in that work. However, there are certain nonprofits that are out there, and they're reminding us of the wins and the areas where things are changing and really, in a good way. And a lot of it is the legal stuff. It's interesting. Sometimes I think like, what would my path have been if I had gone down the environmental law route? And yet, interestingly, also, when I used to go to conferences with environmental lawyers just for my CLE to keep my continuing legal education up, so many times they were so in what they did that they didn't, like, I would talk about the, like, this was many years ago, so this was maybe newer on the scene, but I would talk about the bottles in the ocean, these miles of plastic in the ocean. And I remember the one lady,
Right.
just in line at lunch, she's saying to me, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Are you, like, are you so in your work that you're not paying attention to, like, the environmental situations overall?" And again, not to focus though on the negative, because there's a lot of good that's happening, but also it's just interesting to watch some of the groups that are very conscious about it. So they're doing the work, doing the hard work, taking what I would call despair and moving it into action, where other groups that can be
Yes.
very
Oh, I like
down
that.
and dire. And so I really want to help any environmental organizations, that especially the smaller ones, because that's who I work with, those leaders, but to really help them if they feel like their team or even themselves as a leader is getting into the dire right now. Let's help change that into just that, move that energy into action, and then into a vision for what we could really create on this planet at this time. I call it a slingshot moment, John. Like, like we're being pulled back, but everything's going to move forward, I believe, very quickly. So, yeah.
I love it. And I really love what you said, that despair into action. That is what a brilliant way to couch that. And that could be applied to so many different things.
Oh, really?
Um,
Yeah. Just
you
any
know,
area.
yeah, I mean, not just obviously in the environmental sector or even in the nonprofit sector, but just in everyday life.
Yes.
So many times people see things going on around them, and they get mournful. They despair. They were like, "Oh, I can't make a difference.
Exactly.
There's nothing I can do." It reminds me of that the starfish on the beach thing.
Yes.
You familiar with that?
I am very familiar.
Right, there's thousands of starfish, on the beach, and this little boy is throwing them in the ocean one at a time, and somebody walks over and says, "Why are you wasting your time? You can't possibly make a difference." And the kid picks one up and tosses it in and says, "I made a difference for that one."
It's one
And
of
that's
my favorite stories. I love that you mentioned that. Yeah.
yeah, and there's a continuation on that it does most people stop it
Yeah.
there, but the continuation is that the old man who's watching the kid do this just says, "Oh well," and he reaches down and he picks up a starfish and throws it in the sea as well. And then others who are walking by are noticing this, and they come and join in, and soon the beach is clear
Oh,
and all the starfish have been
so
returned to
good.
the
I
sea.
don't know if I've ever
Right?
heard the
Doesn't it give you
story.
chills?
Yeah, totally chills, total chills. And it's so interesting you brought that story in, because I remind myself of that sometimes. When I'm having a moment of angst or despair or whatever it is, I'll be like, wait a minute, like one change, one person, one trajectory of a
One thing.
degree, and it will make a difference. And so I think for all of us, if we can focus on that, and right now, if anyone's paying attention to anything in the news or the social media or whatever, it's always been since maybe like Edward Bernays, I don't know if you probably know him. He was a PR specialist way back in the day, and was really the one who took a lot of psychology and brought it into public relations. And
Yep.
and so this idea, slowly this idea of like, okay, fear propaganda can come in. And but the interesting thing is there's so many channels, like your channels, John, and your books, that are really focused on the good too. There's so much good. So just what are we going to focus on? It doesn't mean we don't be informed, but that's not all that's going on. But it can feel like that in those moments. So like, okay, then how do we pick ourselves up and not
Right.
just help ourselves, but throw that starfish in, So I love that you brought that story.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, focus on where we can make a difference,
Yeah.
and focus on the good. There was one of the news channels in Washington D.C. For a while. They would end their newscast at the end of the final, after all the doom and gloom and all this garbage going on and who's doing what to who. The end of it, they would always have some positive news story
No.
focusing on some, like, I don't know, some local student who did something really good or whatever. They always wanted to end on an up note, and I absolutely love that about them. And then
Yeah.
some of the people changed, the anchors
Right.
changed and whatever, and
It's changed.
they didn't do it anymore. But for a long time, that was great. And so, I always tried to focus on those good news pieces myself. And some of
Yeah.
my media posts and stuff, social media posts have been about, just good people that I find out there.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what we need to do.
That's what we need to do, is support the good, support what's happening on the good side, support.
No matter how bad it is, remember there's good.
Yeah. That's remind.
We're having a delightful conversation with Katie Augustine. I just want to let people know we're about 15 minutes into this chat. And if you're just kind of jumping in now, go back and listen to this from the beginning, because Katie is brilliant and has a lot of wonderful things to share. And just the positive energy that is flowing across the camera here has just been just very uplifting. So thank you. Katie, I want to redirect this conversation just a little bit, because you published in Cracking the Rich Code, Volume 12.
Yeah.
And I'd like to talk a little bit about what it was that you wrote about. You called it an evolutionary birthing, and that's only a portion of the title.
Yes.
But let's talk a little bit about what you wrote about and what you wanted people to get out of that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So yeah, my chapter, I do think, was a little, had a little bit of a different view, and it was really about, as I mentioned earlier, this time we can call it an evolutionary birthing or a planetary evolution. I do love always to give credit where credit's due, and so Dr. Stan Grof is a transpersonal psychologist, kind of like the granddaddy of transpersonal psychology, that's psychology where it takes psychology and it moves it into the spiritual. It's kind of the idea of transpersonal. So Dr. Grof coined a birthing matrix, and it had 4 phases, being like comfy in the womb. A lot of people, not everyone. And then the kind of contraction start, he coined it like hell no exit. And then this birthing moment. Yeah, right. And then the birthing moment of the blood and guts phase, and then moving into like whole new life is born, or it's a very precarious time too. So, or, everything could go away in those moments. But so that's part of my motivation of saying this could be an evolutionary birthing moment if we think of it. And, a lot of people feel like we've been leading up to kind of those contractions, and now we're in more of the not just the birthing pains, but the blood and guts of it. But what I really
I was just going to ask you which phase we were in.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, I think you're probably right.
According to the indigenous elders in this era of 2026, and then, kind of what we're all witnessing, it may be the blood and guts. I don't want to say it.
This is the painful.
Yeah, it's just a theory. This is all my own personal theory, not on behalf of, I know I work for an institute many people might know, but this is on my personal theory. So what I brought with this theory to other coaches and influencers and just anyone who's reading our wonderful book is this idea of, what if we held a collective vision? Because we know most coaches and influencers and executive coaches are helping people work with vision, right? Some version of a goal, an objective, a vision. And then regardless of the facts, you're working toward this, future vision or self. And my idea was add collective vision in here. So it's not so personal or so just organized. I work with nonprofits, so organizational or company oriented, but we also add in, what would we all love for the planet, for the ecosystems, for our next 7 generations, right? What would we love? And the more of us that are working with high level clients that are advanced clients, we're not taking the clients that are in survival mode and just looking to, move from that despair to action. They may or may not be ready for this yet. But I do believe so many people are working with coaches now that they're ready to move into this next level of evolution. And we're not going to create it without holding a vision for it, because everything's created by our thinking. And so first we want to hold that vision, and then take action in our own way toward that. And that's, again, what I already seen nonprofit leaders do. So I wanted to, my work then moved since this book came out, Volume 12 came out 2 years ago already, almost. But so my work moved to supporting them in just, taking it to the next level, but inviting everyone to say, what would I love? Like, whether I have kids or not, like I don't personally have children, but I do want something better for the planet and the animals and the creatures. And then my nieces and nephew, and just for that evolution to go on in a really beautiful way. And many things are going well also, to not forget about that can be in that vision. But then in this, I call it collective vision, but it's really everyone has their own version of that, right? But then in
Right.
that version of a collective vision, what they would love, how do I take a step toward that too? And it might be in my, it might be part of my philanthropy or my hobby or something, but how do I also take steps toward that? So that was the invitation that I brought in the chapter. Thank you. Thanks for asking.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So if we were trying to distill that, if you wanted one message to come out of
Mhm.
that for people, what would you want people to come away with after having read your chapter?
I would want to remind them that we are in what I might call a tipping point or this birthing moment, and our consciousness is going to affect it. Each and not not just certain people, certain leaders, certain whatever. Every one of us
Nope.
is the center of the universe. We're
Yes.
made of stardust, right? Literally the universe is in us. And I think Gene Houston talks about the macro and the micro, and I use some really great quotes from some great teachers along the way in the chapter. But the idea that our consciousness, each and every one of us, will affect our future that we're all moving toward. And so just to lean into, like, you can hold a collective vision and know that you're making a difference by holding that energy. If you want to take steps toward that, even better. That would be the message. Yeah.
It's just like the indigenous legend of the wolves, right? The two wolves inside of
Yes.
us,
Yes.
the white wolf and the dark wolf.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. It depends on which one you
It
feed.
doesn't-
Which one survives is which one you feed. And so the energy that we put out there, if we put out positive energy, we can tip the
Mhm.
scales this way. If we put out negative energy, we can tip the scales that way. And I think we feel that just in our interactions with other people on a day-to-day basis. Right?
Absolutely.
You walk into the supermarket, right? And if the cashier is grouchy
Yes.
or whatever, you can feel that. And you have a choice at that moment. You can either be influenced by that grouchiness and be in a crappy mood when you walk out of there going, oh, that was a fun
Yeah.
exchange. Or you could perhaps smile and maybe help that person feel just a scooch better.
Mm.
That's a technical
Yeah.
term, a scooch
Absolutely.
better. Uh, and maybe that will pass on to the next
Yeah,
person.
we so much have an effect. And I have to share, John, because it's just so exact to what you're speaking of the grocery store. One of my primary mentors, and she's a friend of mine and happens to be my boss in my other world, my other life, Mary Morrissey, has a great story. Exactly this. She's with a cashier's grouchy to the person in front of her, really grouchy with her. And she walks outside with the bagger to her car and says, kind of gossips. This is in her older days before when she's kind of advanced now, but back then gossips a little and says, "Wow, that cashier was really grouchy," And the bagger says, "Oh, I know. I'm just feeling so bad for her. Her son he was on his bike and got hit by a car yesterday, and he's in the hospital. And I know she really wants to
Oh,
be in the hospital, but with her." And Mary Morrissey, as my mentor said, everything in me changed in that moment, especially as a mother, and like, I had total nothing but compassion for her versus, upset that she was grouchy. And she says, so what if we could look at every person and every situation as like, bring compassion first. And it's just such a great teaching to remember that not only could we not let something affect us, but we could actually, maybe somehow change it or at least bring some compassion, even if it's just,
yeah.
and part of my message, right? Even if it's in our thinking, because our thinking is so much more powerful, I believe, than we give it credit for at this point.
And I think so often too, we take a tendency to internalize, right? If somebody else is grouchy, like, what do you have against me?
Yes.
It's not, you don't know what's going on in their life. There's an ancient proverb. It says, if you live long enough, everything will happen to you.
Ah, wow. Isn't
Okay?
that interesting? I love that.
So,
I hadn't.
so yeah, times things will be good,
Mhm.
sometimes not so good. You'll have money, you'll need money,
Mhm.
you'll be hungry, you'll be
Mhm.
full. Different times in your life, you could be going through anything. In one chapter of your story, you can be the hero. In another chapter, you might be the
Yeah.
victim. And yet in some other episode of your life, you may very well be the villain in someone else's story.
Yes.
And you may or may not even know it, but you don't know what's going on in people's lives. And everybody's going through all these cycles.
Yeah.
If we just take a moment to just treat each other with a little bit more kindness, understanding, and compassion. You don't know what's going on. You don't know why that person is grouchy.
Yeah, I love.
Right. But to find out that her son was hit by a car and she would prefer obviously to be by his bedside, but she has to
Yeah,
work.
yeah, single mom, to
Yeah.
work.
You just don't know.
That
Right.
proverb
So
is so good. I hadn't heard that before, but I do feel like as I'm now in my 50s versus, my younger years, that there's
youngster.
well, there's just so many times where I think, and I even sometimes will advise my younger self, just knowing that all time is now. But I think, it's so interesting that, you don't know, like my dad ended up dying when I was very young. So like everything's going really well. And then my family has this kind of, tragedy, so to speak. And it's just so interesting to be now that was many years ago. So now many years beyond that, to know this idea of like, yeah, you're going to have good times and hard times and times where your body's doing well and times where it may not be, and all these things that you'll go through.
All of a sudden something hurts.
Yeah, and it's like
that's just aging.
I know. So like, how do we respond to all of that, right? And how do we and I just love when I get to work with people, and even these leaders that I'm working with, is just reminding them that it's it's not the slow it's not the immediate moment that we're thinking of. It's like a long game, and even longer than just our time on the planet. Really, it's a long game. And especially most of these nonprofits, they're created to create a difference in the world, for legacy reasons, right? And so in the long game of it, if we're having a couple tough years, can we just get out of ourselves around it and lean into, okay, so even so, like, what's my next step? But I love that you said that. It is really, yeah, it's just really interesting to think about it that way, especially as a little older than in the younger years. Like, yeah, I've been through kind of a lot, actually. So, yeah.
Believe me, I understand that. So, wow, I can't believe we're almost out of time already. See how quickly this goes? It's ridiculous. And we could talk all day.
I know. As a matter of fact,
Absolutely.
we want to schedule something that you and I can talk longer.
Yes, we absolutely should. But so if people want to learn more about you, they should go to your website,
Yes.
which is ECSEvolveConsultingServices.com.
Absolutely. Yep, that's it.
And best way to get in touch with you is via LinkedIn.
You got it. Yep, that's a great way.
Okay, so people can find you on LinkedIn, and her name is Katie Augustine, but it's a her real URL there is Catherine-Katie-Augustine-Earth Advocate. And I say that just because people, if you're not looking at the screen and they're just listening to the audio, they know what to look for. But you could just look up Katie Augustine and you'll find her. And that's a great way to get in touch with her. And most importantly, pick up a copy of Cracking the Rich Code, Volume 12, and read Katie's chapter. And her contact information is in there as well.
Oh, thanks, Sean. Can I add one thing? I want to say that
absolutely,
when our Volume 12 came out, we had a Zoom session for folks, and we all met as co-authors, and then, as you know, we meet as co-authors, a lot of us, in all the volumes, in a mastermind with Jim as well, with Jim Britt. But I just want to say that the people that wrote in my chapter that I got to know better, and then you and some others that I get to know from the mastermind, I mean, every single person that is contributing to these books are brilliant, and they're offering such good advice. And I had a lot of friends that bought my book, or I gifted them my book, and they loved the whole book. Like, they were like blown, they bought it kind of to support me, but then they were blown away by the book. So I suggest getting all the volumes and reading them, and just enjoying all the different tips and tools and teachings, and just some really great. I think you've said it earlier when here, and then also before we started, that there's just so many good people in this mastermind and in this community. So I just want to honor all of them as well.
Absolutely. There's so much great stuff. And you're in Volume 12, and I flank you. Actually, I'm in 11 and 13.
I didn't know that.
I'm actually in 10, 11, and 13.
Oh, cool. Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay, great. So we have to get 10, 11, and 13 for sure. And then 12, of course.
And 12. And I actually just picked up a copy, so I have 12 as well.
Oh, great. Oh, awesome.
So now I have the hard copy with your version in
Oh,
it. So,
awesome.
but
Well,
Katie, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic conversation. I know people are going to fall in love with your energy.
mm,
And so, I will remind everybody, please reach out to Katie. You can find her on LinkedIn. Katie Augustine on LinkedIn. You can also go to her website, which is ecsevolveconsultingservices.com. And most importantly, check out her chapter in Cracking the Rich Code Volume 12. Katie, thanks again for being here today, for all of the energy that you put out there in the world and all the wonderful things you're doing. Greatly appreciate it.
thank you, John.
Have a great day.
And thank you for hosting me.
And thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
I love it. I get to have these conversations. It's
So
fantastic.
good. So good.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day.